Hello, I'm Simon Owens, and you're listening to The Business of Content, a podcast about how publishers create, distribute, and monetize their digital content. This week, we're talking about the Atlantic's in-house creative agency and how it works with Fortune 500 brands to create editorial content. The Atlantic may be a 160-year-old institution, but it isn't shy about experimenting with new things. It was one of the first traditional publications to go all in on digital media in the late aughts and managed to achieve profitability from the move pretty quickly. It experimented with brand new verticals like the Atlantic Wire and Quartz. Recently, it was acquired by Laurene Powell Jobs' Emerson Collective, which has been investing in forward-thinking media sites. And since 2012, it's been running an in-house creative agency called Atlantic 57. The idea is simple. Let's take the editorial insights we've gleaned from running a magazine for 160 years and use that to launch online publications for major brands and nonprofits. I recently interviewed Margaret Myers, a longtime journalist who works on one of these editorial projects for insurance company Allstate. I asked her about her past life as a traditional journalist and how she leverages that expertise in developing content for the Renewal Project, the online publication she manages for Allstate. Let's jump right into it. Hey, Margaret, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Simon. Thanks for having me.
So you work for something called Atlantic 57. What is Atlantic 57?
So Atlantic 57 is the consulting and creative division of The Atlantic. And we were founded in 2012. And we exist because The Atlantic, wonderful, beautiful magazines, The Atlantic, that many people know, has built a legacy of telling stories that challenge people to think differently about their world. Even an issue that you thought you might have known, you're going to go to an Atlantic story, read it, and you will think differently about something that you thought you knew. So many people know of the magazine, but The Atlantic is also a website that attracts millions of users a month. It's an events business, a podcasting outlet, a video studio, a creative advertising shop, and then us. We are the digital strategy consultancy. And so what we do is we work with clients and we draw from the strengths of The Atlantic, a 160-year-old property that has really transformed into a digital media pioneer. So we use some of that knowledge to help organizations attract and inspire and galvanize their own audiences.
When I originally reached out to you, I thought the Atlantic 57 was responsible for creating the content for the native advertising that appears at the Atlantic, but that's actually a completely separate shop, right? Like you guys do something completely different than that.
Absolutely. And we partner with our partners at Rethink, which is they do create custom content for the Atlantic's audiences. And that's a common misconception, and that's cool. We are, like I said, we are a consulting division. So we don't just create campaigns. We work with clients to help them reshape the way they approach their own content. We can even help structure their teams and help them think about their audiences.
And you guys, so you guys could be compared more to almost like a creative agency. So like the stuff that you're creating doesn't necessarily live on the Atlantic. It could live on a separate website. It could be living on the social channels for your clients. You're almost kind of like a creative advertising / marketing type of agency.
Yes, we are, and we are more. We have a team of researchers, so we do audience research. We also have business strategists, people who, my coworkers, who I believe many have worked with traditional consulting firms. And so, we all work together. I'm on the editorial team, and I'm actually a former journalist. And so we work together to create, like I said, not just campaigns, but we help organizations, kind of solve some of their greatest digital challenges.
But a big selling point for you guys is you say we can take some of the expertise that we've learned over 160 years, creating great editorial products, and we can create those kind of editorial products for you. And that's what you do. So your background's actually in journalism, right? Like talk a little bit about your background.
Yeah, my background and a lot of my coworkers on the editorial side, we have a group of writers and editors who we've all come from the journalism world. I've spent the last 20 years of my career working in newsrooms. So I started out as a photojournalist, and then I moved into features reporting and editing. And that is my expertise, is finding stories, bringing stories to life. And I help brands do that now.
And what made you decide to cross over to the brand side?
I didn't think of it as the quote unquote brand side, what I thought when I came here is I had been working in newsrooms for so many years, and it's very exhilarating. It's long hours. But I like my last job, I was at PBS NewsHour, and I can tell you that we felt very satisfied at the end of the day that we have done something useful for our audiences. We have, created we've created a product that is helping people, translate some of the stuff that was going on in the world. Very satisfying, but it was very challenging work. And I really wanted to expand my own knowledge of how to work in a space where I wasn't just creating content, but I was really understanding the business side. And I think this job where I sit is kind of perfect because in my day to day, I do create content and I'm really just immersed in storytelling. But I sit with and near, and I collaborate with my business partners here at Atlantic 57 and strategists who really they think differently than I do. And when you bring the two of like when you bring all of us together, it creates something pretty magical. And I think that is why we attract the brands and the corporations and the nonprofits and foundations that we do attract.
And so you kind of touch upon kind of like a debate kind of within the both native advertising and content marketing world is, can you create content for a brand that has the same integrity and quality that you would see on, from a traditional editorial operation? And so do you feel like, and we'll in a minute, we'll talk a little bit about the specific projects you work on, but like, do you think that that's achievable?
I do think it's achievable because I bring the exact same skills that I was using when I worked at PBS NewsHour and ESPN before that, and newspapers before that. So I'm approaching my storytelling work the exact same way. The only difference is that I collaborate with my clients, and they give me feedback, but they look to me for my editorial expertise. I happen to work with clients currently that are not in the media space. So they want me to tell the stories the best way I know how. We do have media clients. We work with a lot of public media. And in fact, we've worked with PBS in the past. So that's a lot of fun because we're working with folks who do understand the editorial and media world.
And so how many people work approximately, you don't have to know the exact number, but like about how many people work at Atlantic 57?
We're about 50 and we're growing. We are hiring. So please check us out at atlantic57.com. But yeah, we have a few openings, and it's a pretty exciting time at the Atlantic wide. I'm always fielding, questions from friends and people who are looking at our careers page because there's a lot of great growth happening.
And tell me a little bit more about the talent you have. You said you guys have like an audience development team, you have a consulting team. I'm guessing you have like a design team. Do you have a video team, marketing team? Like what are the different talents do you guys hire for?
So here's what we got. We have a team of, I'll talk about editorial first because that's what I do. Mm-hmm. I think our editorial team is probably the most robust in size anyway. So we are writers, content strategists, growth editors. These are folks who are, using social media to help develop audiences, and they're experts in, understanding how to grow those audiences. We have a team of strategists, of business strategists. They are, like I said, a lot of them come from traditional consulting firms. We have a product team with UX experts, developers, engineers, designers, and researchers. And these folks are, helping identify shared audience needs for our clients.
And so you currently work on like a brand partnership with Allstate, which is an insurance company. What are you doing for them?
So I run the renewalproject.com, and this is a platform. This is Allstate's platform to share stories about innovative ideas, people who are solving problems in their communities. I'm looking for stories across the country that are showing how folks are, finding some of the big new ideas and solutions for their community's specific challenges. And it's really fun. In one of my past lives, I was a features editor, and I like I said, I bring the same idea to my job every day, where I look for the best stories, and it they are not hard to find, because we do have it's a national audience. We tell stories about folks from across the country, and so I follow local newspapers. Shout out to local newspapers. I find some of our best stories from the local papers, and they're sharing the ideas of their residents, and how they're doing something really innovative or creative.
So why would a client or a brand like Allstate find value in something like this? Can you kind of like walk me through, like, obviously you can't get into their head exactly, but in terms of like the Atlantic 57's view on why, because it's not a publication about insurance, so like it's not tied directly to what they're doing. It's not trying to sell people on buying from Allstate. So what kind of value does Allstate kind of derive from something like this?
Sure. So, Allstate, and we have a little bit of information about this on the renewalproject.com, but Allstate, I think people will think of Allstate as this, huge corporation, and it's a company. But it's more than that. They think of themselves as a network of 10,000 small business owners across the country, and these are the insurance agents in your local community. And so, as a result, these folks are on the ground, and they're kind of in tune with the needs of the individuals in their towns. And so, the great thing is that I listen to them, and they sometimes give me some of our best stories. And I know that community service is very important to these folks and to Allstate as a corporation. We've run we've written a little bit about Allstate CEO Tom Wilson, and he has talked about how corporations have an opportunity to step up and be problem solvers in their own community. And I think I am helping. I'm helping to share that message with our readers and with our audience. And I'm doing that by telling the stories of people who are innovating in their hometowns.
And so, like, is the idea in terms of value that it engenders like goodwill among the very communities that Allstate is, operating in? That like someone will read this article or see this video, derive value from it, and see that Allstate created it, and that will create kind of like a kind of a positive association in their head.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely part of it. And when I first started this job, and one of our ways of bringing some of these stories to life is by going out and asking the people in the communities themselves to write about what they're doing. And so I would reach out to our potential contributors, and I'd tell them about the website and how Allstate's behind it. And I've always gotten a positive reaction, like, yeah, sure, we'll go on this journey with you. We are happy to tell the story, and we are happy that a corporation like Allstate wants to support it. Why not?
And so tell me about the day-to-day process for managing this project. Like are you kind of like an editor in chief? Are you a managing editor? Tell me about, like, what are the analogies to like a more normal, like our more traditional newsroom in terms of how it's running?
Yes, yeah, we do think of ourselves as a mini newsroom. So, yeah, I guess I'd be the editor in chief, or managing editor. um, and yep, I build out the editorial calendar. I know some of the events and holidays that are upcoming, and I kind of plan content around it. I work with a social engagement editor, and between the two of us, we are actually, everyone on the team, like A57 wide, they all know that I'm always looking for stories. So everybody contributes stories. We use a Slack channel. And so everyone on the team is contributing, sharing links of something that they read in a local paper, or even in the New York Times or Washington Post. And so I'm gathering all of these ideas. I'm writing pitches. So not everything gets to end up on the Renewal Project, but I write pitches as to why this makes a great Renewal Project story. And then I share those pitches with our client, and we talk them through, and we talk about why this would be great for us. And then from there, we figure out how to tell the story. So it could just be, um, a photo gallery. It could be a very traditional story where I would interview folks and, write an 800 to 1,000 word story. Or it could be that I would reach out to someone at the heart of the story and ask them to write their own personal essay. And we've done a lot of analytics research, and we've found that a lot of these first person stories are extremely powerful and they resonate. And so that's definitely part of our strategy.
And are you like regularly recruiting freelance writers and journalists and other kind of creatives, or like what's that? Are you doing it mainly in house? Like, I mean, I know you obviously you said you were doing the first person stories directly from the sources, but do you kind of have like a stable of actual journalists who are freelancing for you?
We have a few freelancers. When our schedules get really cramped up or when we're on the road a lot, we do attend events as well with Allstate. We do have freelancers, but for the most part, I am writing, or even our social engagement editor is writing. We have folks on staff who, it's not often. I mean, everyone's really busy, but once in a while, like they find a story that they want to write about, or even they find a really interesting person, or maybe it's someone that they know, and they can conduct a Q&A, and we'll go ahead and publish that. I'm at the center of everything. I'm editing, I'm managing, and I'm making sure that the trains are running on time, and that everything is headlines and art work together, and I'm managing the homepage to make sure that it always looks wonderful and beautiful, and that the messages that are coming across are very clear.
What's some of the journalism, like we talk about impact in journalism, like what are some of the things that you are particularly proud of that you guys have produced for them?
Absolutely. I was thinking about that this morning. Some of my favorite stories happen to be, this is probably not by accident, they happen to be some of our most trafficked pieces. And what they do is they just show a little sliver of some of the creative problem solving that folks are doing. And so one of my favorites is from a fellow named Tim Ryan, and he's in Lincoln, Nebraska. He tore up his lawn because he didn't want to rely as much on getting his food from other sources. So he tore up his lawn, planted a garden, and one by one, each of his neighbors decided to do the same. And, he's at the center of it all, kind of mobilizing everybody and galvanizing this neighborhood project. Now in his neighborhood, the entire neighborhood is a community garden. And this is just, a suburban neighborhood. So that was one of our very popular stories. We have a lot of contributors who write about lifting up their own communities, like an identity community. So we have a social entrepreneur who's writing about creating a grocery store in his neighborhood in Detroit. And this is a neighborhood that hasn't seen the same revitalization as other parts of Detroit. And, once his grocery store gets up and running, he will be the only it'll be the only Black owned grocery store in this city that is a majority African-American city. And so he writes about why that is so special and why that is important to him. And that story really resonated with people. And it was shared widely on many different Facebook channels and communities. And just listening to their comments, like they didn't necessarily live in the city of Detroit, but this was still important to them. And so that made me smile.
You mentioned that these are some of your most well-trafficked stories. Like what kind of metrics is your team compiling? Like, are you guys expected to produce regular reports? Like what kind of metrics are you judged by?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do produce, I look daily. I'm constantly looking at Google Analytics, which is what we use. But we produce monthly and quarterly reports. And from there, we can see the story of what is resonating with our audience. So we do look at website traffic. We obviously look at social media metrics. We have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram specifically for the Renewal Project. And we are looking at comments, likes, shares, especially. And then when we do see something really bubbling to the top especially on Facebook, I'll read the comments and see why, and try to kind of analyze and give give Allstate some insight into why some of these stories are resonating.
And how much contact and input is coming from the client? Like you mentioned that you have to pitch the stories ahead of time. Like how involved are they in kind of like the day-to-day site?
Yeah, so I speak regularly with Allstate. I have a few people who I regularly talk to. And I mean, since we established the types of stories we wanted to tell, there really has never been a pushback where I present a story and they're like, no, 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 that's not going to work for us. Because we have a really good idea of what a renewal story looks like. And, I wrote a whole document about like, all right, this is what a renewal story's got to have. It's got to be about someone doing something in their community. But it has to go a step further and then talk about, why is that creative, or why is that particularly unique, or even just surprising, or, and sometimes the simplest story is the most surprising. So we do have that foundation that we go from. And from there, they honestly just want to hear all the fun stories that I find. I mean, I was on a call with them a couple weeks ago, and my partner at Allstate just said, "You have the funnest job. I want to do what you do because I get to talk to cool people who are doing these really neat things in their towns, and that is super fun."
Tell me about the events component.
Yeah, so we have an events series. It's called the Renewal Series, and the Renewal Series itself predates the renewalproject.com. And just to go back a little bit, so Allstate has been an advertising partner to the Atlantic for over a decade now. I believe the partnership started back in 2007. Allstate underwrote a series of polls. These polls were to help determine the health of the U.S. economy and the well-being of Americans that were going through the recession. And so from that work, journalists at the Atlantic, from that polling, journalists at the Atlantic wrote stories about what they found. And so over the years, the partnership has expanded to include this event series and also an awards program called the Renewal Awards. And that is run as a partnership between the Atlantic and Allstate. And so...
Is that separate from Atlantic 57?
I know there's a lot, and it's really exciting, but there's so much that goes into this partnership. But currently we have 2 events a year, and they are managed by the Atlantic's in-house events team called Atlantic Live. And so I can tell you that is correct. Atlantic Live falls under the editorial umbrella. So they're part of the Atlantic. But, we share a floor over here at the Watergate. We're in the Watergate, by the way. And so to kind of illustrate this event series, I can talk about an event that we just had in Houston. It was in November. And, the themes are always roughly renewal and community. But the discussions and the guests that we have at the events, those are curated and selected by Atlantic journalists. And Ron Brownstein, who is a journalist here, is behind a lot of the content and discussion at those events. And we talk about, oftentimes we'll invite the mayor in whatever town that we're in. Like last year, we were both in Houston and New Orleans. And in New Orleans, we invited the mayor to speak about, what were some of the greatest challenges that his city has seen, since Hurricane Katrina, for example, and what are the challenges going forward. And then we also have speakers and panels that are composed of some of the most, the innovative thinkers in that town, who can both talk about what's happening in their town and then how does that inform a larger national conversation. So we had a panel the Houston panel, we had some folks who dealt with Hurricane Harvey recovery and what they've learned from it. And that was really fascinating. I didn't know that I would be so interested in what they've learned, but it really spoke to the challenges that community leaders in general face, and not just in times of a disaster.
You guys are all in the the Watergate. How much of the like kind of editorial ethos of the Atlantic kind of bleeds over into what you guys do? Like, do you guys, Is there really kind of synergies between the two in terms of learning, collaborations, camaraderie, or do you guys just are kind of just operating on your own kind of separate plane?
A little from both. Like, I feel like there are days when I'm just we're all in our own bubble. But, frankly, there are a lot of synergies. We invite the different departments to come. We have a weekly, it's called, our insights, and it's an hour long learning time where we program folks from all different departments of the Atlantic to come and share some of their best work, case studies, and best practices and things they've learned. So, in an upcoming week, we'll have the Atlantic video team is going to talk to us about their strategy and their best practices and what they've learned about their audiences. We've definitely had folks from, talk about like the Atlantic's newsletters, and so we absolutely work together. And like I said, that's kind of what feeds some of the work that we do with our clients. And I think that's what, is attractive about us to our clients, is that we can tap the expertise of some of the leading media and editorial strategists, working today.
So that kind of dovetails into my next question of like the advantages, or what advantages you think Atlantic 57 has over a traditional creative agency. Like, let's say there's this Fortune 100 company, they put out a, request for proposal for a new agency of record or something like that. Like, how much do you think that that's the selling point, is like, we built, a prestige editorial brand through the Atlantic, creative agency X just doesn't have that level of expertise. Like, is that really the kind of differentiating factor that you guys can pitch yourself as?
Yeah, I think, I've never worked at an agency before, but what I have noticed and is that we are this very multidisciplinary agency and creative space. The fact that we have such a robust editorial team staffed by former journalists, the fact that we can, learn from brands, learn from Atlantic's journalism. They have been honing and sharpening this brand for 160 years. I think this is what makes us very special, is that we are we are a team of such wide ranging skills and talents. And like I said, I've never worked with business strategists or researchers before. And it makes me a better journalist. It makes me a better writer and storyteller. So you bring all of us together, and we can create some magic.
There's all this kind of hand wringing within journalism circles about the state of the industry and its supposed decline. I wonder. So, like, I'm someone who I make my full-time living as a writer. I write for traditional publications, but I also do content marketing, kind of similar to what you do. And I have like a mixture of clients. Like, do you think that that's kind of, the future of the journalist, is someone who needs to be kind of have that kind of flexibility to, kind of expand what they consider journalism, what they consider, quality content, and kind of diversifying like how they approach their careers?
Are you talking about a journalist or a media organization?
I mean, I just think in general, like, I mean, like, sometimes, like, there are some journalists who are more old school, and it's like, I have to work for a newspaper or a magazine, and that is the career, or else I'm just completely. It's either that, or it's selling out and going into PR. Whereas, like, things like what you do, and then what I do for, on my corporate side of like what I offer a lot of clients, like, I'm doing cool stuff, I'm creating cool content. Sometimes it's behind the scenes, sometimes it's with my byline on it. And so I wonder if, like, just kind of generally what your thoughts are on that in terms of like the future of, the profession and kind of where we're heading in terms of like content. Like, do you think that there needs to be that kind of flexibility in thinking?
I think, unfortunately, there does. Yes, there has to be some, but I still firmly believe in the power and the necessity of local journalism. I mean, just looking at some of the most important stories from the last few years are coming from local journalists understanding their communities and uncovering some of the injustices in their own communities, and informing the rest of us as to why these are important. So I'll always stand by that. Like, if we need journalism, we need newspapers. I'm still such a strong supporter. I think I subscribe to like 5 newspapers. But I will say that, yes, for the profession, absolutely, there is a need for storytelling. There is a need for folks that have our skills. And, I happen to, I'm actually the president this year of the Society for Features Journalism. And I'm pretty sure I'm the only one only one in the organization who is no longer a strictly professional journalist. So I'm helping to plan our conference this year, and we're talking about themes and like what's important. Well, storytelling is at the heart of what I do, and how we tell stories and how we share those stories and how we get these stories to the audiences that need and want to see them. That's still at the core of what I do. And so, we have a listserv in this features organization that I'm with, and unfortunately we do. One of my friends works at the Dallas Morning News, and he just lost several coworkers to layoffs. And every time I hear that, I just think, you know what, share with them this link to some of our open jobs, because we need people who know how to reach people, and through storytelling. And that is what journalists do. And there are a lot of opportunities for us to do that.
Okay, Margaret. Well, those were all the questions I had. Where can people find you online?
Well, you can find the Renewal Project at therenewalproject.com. You can follow me at Margaret VM. That's V as in victory. I'm at Myers at Atlantic57.com. I am happy to take questions or to put you in touch with someone else who might be able to answer a question for you about our agency, about how we work with the Atlantic and how we work with clients. I love it. I love sharing some of the cool stuff that we get to do.
Awesome. Well, this was a lot of fun. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Simon.
Okay, that's all we have for you today. Be sure to subscribe to the Business of Content on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. See you next week.